Welcome to those online and any public that are here for the March 5, 2025 meeting of the Flooded Reservation Water Management Board, and start with an opening prayer. George, if you are so kind as to
Certainly.
help us today.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and say a prayer for us. Dear Lord Jesus, thank you for this day, for the sunshine that we have up there, for this gathering of people, our staff, our board members. Be with all of us, be in our hearts, help us to agree and work together to come to mutual agreements on the issues at hand. May we all return home safely, protect us all. In Jesus' name, amen.
And George, to announce meeting minutes are always on the Flooded Reservation Water Management Board.gov website. If you would like to see them. Attendance, please.
Clayton Matt,
Here.
Roger Noble,
You're on mute.
Here.
George McLeod,
Here.
Ken Pitt,
Here.
Georgia Smuse,
Here.
Shane Hendrickson.
Here. Any potential conflicts of interest, if you've had a chance to look at the agenda, Georgia?
No conflicts.
Ken? No. George?
No.
Roger?
No.
All right, and none here. Meeting minutes of 2/12/25, please.
You say 225 or
Uh,
212?
February 12 of 2025, meeting minutes.
Gotcha. Sorry.
No. Any comments, questions, or concerns on the February 12 minutes? If not, I'll take a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the minutes for February 12, 2025.
Motion by Ken,
I'll second.
second by George, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, we're approved, thank you. So today's agenda. Any comments, questions, changes to today's agenda?
Mr. Chairman, on executive session, are we gonna need the office room?
Please.
Break down the whole. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve today's March 5th, 2025 agenda.
Motion by Georgia,
I'll second it.
second by George, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we have an agenda, thank you. Public comment for items not on the agenda, so means as we have a packed house today, or not. Anybody online?
If anyone online would like to speak, please raise your hand. Seeing no public comment.
Public comment at this time, there'll be opportunity for public comment later on in the agenda as well. Thank you. Introductions, item number 3, so Ethan.
Here, it is my pleasure to announce Amanda Berens, Tyrel Fenner, new employees with our organization.
And they know that I'm gonna make them come introduce themselves to you, so that's why they're wiggling over there a little bit. But anyway, we'll go ahead and let you guys sort out who you'd like to have come up and join first, but both of these positions are much needed for our organization. We're excited to have them on board. I'll talk a little bit more when it's my turn about some staffing and some other things, but for now, I'll just shut up and sit down and he's gonna go first. Okay,
There we go.
thank you.
You're welcome, and it's not such a hot seat, so welcome.
Hi, my name is Amanda Berens and I grew up in Polson, so I'm local. I started working for the Fish and Wildlife Service when I was 17 years old and I worked there most of my adult life. I worked through one of the STEP programs. It's probably called something different now, but that's what it was when I was there. I worked at the Creston National Fish Hatchery as a fish technician. I led their youth conservation corps programs that they used to have. I worked in Washington, DC, in the national office at the Fish and Wildlife Service and the Fisheries Department. And my most recent job with Fish and Wildlife Service was a biologist at a bison range, wildlife biologist. So I specialize in necropsy, chronic wasting disease testing, data management, so much, a lot, invasive weeds. And then other positions I've had outside Fish and Wildlife Service is I worked for the US Forest Service as a DNA extraction technician. I've worked at SKC and both with students and also on research projects, including arsenic water contamination testing. And I mean, there's been a lot of projects there too. I guess another one worth noting is the flowering rush surveys that we did on Flathead Lake with the extension office and Virgil Dupuy. I have a bachelor's degree in wildlife and fisheries biology, another one in forest management, a GIS certificate, and a master's degree in professional wildlife biology and conservation management from the Environmental University. And I'm excited to be here and get to know everyone and be a part of this team.
Thank you for your background, Casey. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
And next case, you
And in this case, yeah, thank you.
and another SKC.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Chairman and board members. My name is Tyrel Fenner. I'm from Babb, Montana originally. So not far from here, another section of the crown of the continent. Near Triple Divide Peak, so that kind of helped me grow interest in hydrology and watershed drainage basins, and that I always thought was interesting. My grandpa's businesses are all triple divide this and that and all that, so I always kind of thought about that on another level from a young age. So I didn't really know what a hydrologist was either, like a lot of people that I asked me, you know, and found a sales community college program at the age of 30, which was a while back now. So I've got a few other experiences that led to that, guiding fishermen and working with the Land and Water Company on some stream habitat restoration. So and I also worked for the Park Service Avalanche Watch and met the the avalanche forecasters there that kind of made me want to go to school for hydrology too. And so I had a really good experience at SKC and lots of good opportunities for different internships with NASA, mainly JPL. I went down there a couple times, and then also with George and the crew over there at the Water Resources Division. Got to help put up some gauges and learn how to, got really good with the flow tracker at that point. And so out of college, I was able to get a hydrologist position with my tribe, the Blackfeet, over there, and worked for them for a few years, and then eventually for the BIA out of the Rocky Mountain region in Billings. And so all those experiences, I got worked with permitting, you know, and water measurement and snowpack, and looking at how much water is available, you know. So there were a lot of water resources and even some climate adaptation projects with deploying woven willow snow fences. That was pretty rewarding work. Got to design that and had a snow lab over there on the Blackfeet Reservation, and so I'm familiar with this area, and, my senior thesis was on the High Mountain Lake, water chemistry there and effects of pollution and climate change on that. So I've, been up in the Mission Mountain Tribal Wilderness, to like 5 different lakes up there, and so I'm excited to be back here and, yeah, go visit these lakes again and learn even more about the water permitting process.
All right, well, you're in the thick of it now.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, thank you,
Thanks,
thank you for being here, all right,
Thanks.
and welcome to both of you. I'm sure we'll be able to keep you busy here in just a short time. Welcome, all right, thanks. All right, guys. Moving on, item number 4, budget update. I
Gonna be hungry today.
guess we're gonna find out.
Yeah. So you have a folder that's labeled finance in front of you. Dive right in. We can get as detailed if you guys want to it. But if there's anything that you want to drill down and get to know a little bit more, we can.
Why don't you give us your overview, and then if there are questions, we'll go from there.
Sounds great. So the one thing I want you guys to take notice is the 2-page 11 by 17.
Okay,
So this is our first quarter of our new fiscal year. This is showing October, November, and December. These are our budget versus actual. When the budget committee met with the funding parties, the discussion is that when we report to them, we'll be reporting in by the quarter instead of by the month. And so this is our first draft, I would say, of what we would be potentially submitting if the board approves that. So we can jump in here if anybody has some questions. Just let me know. So how this is set up is the first column is your actual, the second column is the budget. Some of those line items might not be perfect, but I guarantee that they're actually in the columns like they're supposed to be. And then it shows the percentage remaining, and when you have any of these negative numbers, that means that we're over budget, at least for that month, but not for the year. So this is just a snapshot. So if you see those negative numbers and you're like, oh, we're over budget, it might not mean that it's reflected for the year. So if you go to the last column in water applications, those fees so far for that first quarter, we generated 7,690 in water application fees. And then if you start going down, we have an additional $759 for interest. And then we'll jump into the expenses. So our actual payroll expenses were 89,000 and we had budgeted 168,000. So we're way under budget for that. And I think one of the things that we can attribute that to is we have vacancy savings still. We also have the contract employees. We're not fully built out on the contract employees either. So there's some vacancy savings in that column. When you go down to payroll expenses, that is your fringe benefits, and these are lined out, so you'll see them actually kind of a little bit more separate than what you would be when you got the budget in front of you. So the budget had a 35% fringe rate, and then on the contract employees, it had a 12% for taxes. And so what you're seeing in this column here is it's broke out a little bit more per line item. Any questions so far? Okay, so we'll go into contract services. So accounting fees, we had budgeted 4,500, and what you see there on the actual column for October is a little higher. Because on October and November, we still had Shellick and Davis remnants of information gathering from them. And so you'll see that those 2 months were a little over budget. And then you run into legal fees. The actual was 19,000, and that's because the September legal fee got paid for in October, so that's why you see that higher amount there. And if you go to the end, we're pretty close to like an accounting budget. I think we're over $757 for the quarter, and that's Bishop and Davis. The attorney fees were on the right side. We have $3,267 remaining for that quarter for that budget. So that's great that we're under budget there. And then you run into professional services. So professional services is encompassing, it's actually IT, cleaning services. And then we have a couple other miscellaneous things like Mission Valley Securities, who does the security here. And so that's where the professional services is capturing the rest of those items there. Then you go into regular board meeting comp. This is where we were trying to like catch up with the July, August, September, and trying to get everything figured out. So you're gonna see the overall budget is okay, but you're gonna see some of these columns are a little heavier on October and November because of that catch up period. And then under community compensation, we had the water. Is it water with the legal in Helena that you guys all went to?
Conference.
Water conference, sorry, couldn't think of the name of that. So that's where we're a little bit over budget because of those items there. I think quite a few people attended and got compensated for that. And then the next column is supplies. We are running a little over on our supplies. I think that now that we've got a Costco card, hopefully we're gonna be saving a little bit more over ordering our supplies off of Amazon. Or we'll just kind of keep an eye on that too, so it might fluctuate too. Telephone communications. The one thing that I noticed, this number was a little higher than I thought it should be, and so when I drilled into this, our cell phone stipend is actually included in this. So I will be talking to Tina to see if maybe we can get this separated out. Because telecommunications to me is our Vonage bill, and this is actually including our cell phone stipends that we pay employees, and so we'll be looking into that to see, because it's kind of a skewed number at this point. Postage and mailing service, that's under budget, we're doing good there. Subscriptions, we're doing pretty good right now, but we do have some renewals that are gonna be coming up this summer, especially in June, July, we'll have like the QuickBooks renewal and such. You wanna flip to the second page? So we budgeted the 2,400 for our rents, even though currently we're paying $22.50, but the renewal is due May 15th, I believe, which then we'll be paying that higher rate, and so we've already budgeted for that higher rate moving forward. The rest of it is propane, electricity, water, garbage. That's all pretty standard stuff there. You'll see the equipment column. In that, you'll see the $8,764. That was for computer purchases, and that's still drawing off that 185. That's what we have that line item for, and so that's finalizing those numbers that the funding parties wanted to see for the money spent towards the startup fees. So you have the travel and meetings. I believe, if I'm remembering this correctly, that is employee travel meetings. When you see the B behind it, that means board in that column. So then that would be directed to the board. And I know that the contract employees, a lot of them were getting paid mileage, and then we also had some DNRC training that employees were paid to go to in the water conference. And so during that time period, you'll see a little bit higher. So advertising, that was a little bit higher because of the job ads that we had to put out. I think we did more job ads this go round than we have before, and so we'll just have to kind of monitor that. I think it worked a lot better this time.
advertising, and then down below that is the bank fees. Most of those are for DD fees through QuickBooks. That's where you're gonna get most of your fees in that aspect. So in this last column and right underneath bank fees, you have insurance. That 3,000 is budgeted for liability insurance, and I believe, looking at the original documentation, we might be, I think that I need to review this, because the last submission, I believe Ethan put 10,000 in the budget for D&O insurance and liability. Our current policy, I believe, is 3,000, right?
Yes, I believe that's accurate.
Okay. So then we have the board meeting meals, other cost. I think that if we had something and we really didn't know where to categorize it, we've been putting it in other costs, and it's little purchase amounts at this point. So we did register the truck for $454, and then under fuel and maintenance, that $650 is actually the bed liner. We got our first tank of fuel just this last week in the truck. We might start using this budget a little bit in that way. So, that's the presentation of budget versus actuals. And then if you also have a P&L, it's just a 2-sheet P&L or 3-sheet. That supplements what you have in your hand for your budget versus actuals. And the P&L just breaks it down a little bit more clearly and puts them into one line item for all 3 months. So you can kind of see how it's broke out that way. And then on the back, you'll see that you have total expenses of $224,691 offset by the income of $7,690 for a net income of $216,000 for the quarter. You guys have any questions?
And this one,
This one is the last budget submission that Ethan submitted to the funding parties with the changes that were approved by the board. And so this was referenced if you have any questions about how this was built. We were using these numbers.
and with this submission, did we get our funding?
Not yet. I don't know. That would be a Ethan.
I did reach out to see the next step in after our distribution of the information was that the parties were going to draft funding agreements. I understood that the tribes would be doing a separate funding agreement from the state, which is a subtle change to the way that we had done it before, where it was all under one funding agreement. And so I did reach out yesterday in anticipation that you might be interested in this. I heard back from Pela, and she said that it is a high priority for her to work on it, but they don't have it yet. And she did not have a date.
Okay. Any other questions? Comments, concerns?
Just a lot of gratitude. These aren't easy to do and they're
Thank
time
you.
consuming, so thank
You
you.
guys are very welcome. On the next, piece of paper, you're gonna have a statement of our accounts, and this was as of Monday, and, I just want to make it, understood that, we have about 2.5 months of operating, about 10 weeks.
I almost asked that, you answered that, so hopefully we get funding
Oh, yeah.
in
2.5 months.
less than 2.5 months. So as funding agreements go, I'm assuming they will need to send them to us so that we can review them. Have you heard anything from any of the parties on?
No, not on my end.
that?
I was on the call yesterday with Ethan when we had decided to reach out to them to get an update.
to make it seem a little less bleak, there is another document that, I'll, try to get Rhonda to move to. Oh, just, I didn't mean to get you out of your order, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
it is out of order and it was your agenda,
Oh,
so.
right, sorry about that. All right, well, it'll be a cliffhanger then. We'll move on with the way things were written.
So, the next one would be the D&O insurance. The last,
Let's,
you wanna skip?
no, just
Okay.
try to, it's just a pet peeve, try to avoid acronyms if you can. DNO,
Directors and officers insurance.
thank you.
And so, at the last meeting, Haley had some questions and Ethan wanted some concerns addressed. And I have specifically had emails and conversations with Shelley. What we do know is with Haley's question, she wanted to know if the claims would be the same because the insurances were drastically different. And Shelley said the claims are the same, the coverages are the same, the rates are not. And so she wanted to definitely clarify that is the only difference between the two insurance carriers is what they're gonna charge. But it's the same coverage. And as far as Ethan's question as to what would constitute an officer, Ethan's position as an executive type would constitute an officer, so he would also be covered. So this is up for board action if you guys want to take action.
So to reiterate that Haley's question was, they are the same.
Same coverages, same claims. What's different is the retention. One's a $10,000 retention and the other one's a $35,000 retention, but the coverages are the same. The claims would be the same.
What is retention?
Retention is you would have to, it's like a deductible. If you've gotten a crash and your deductible's 500, this is basically the same thing as a deductible. Your deductible's 10,000 for them to activate the insurance. So 10,000 on one, 35,000 on the other. So it's
Presumably the 10,000 is the more expensive one. No? Okay.
nope. So they're both $1 million limit. One's a $10,000 retention, the other one's a $35,000 retention. The one policy for the year is 6510. The second one, she said it's gonna be over 15,000. She did not push that all the way through underwriting because she wasn't sure that was what we were gonna pay.
So I have kind of a naive question, from lack of knowledge. Is any way or have these two different companies been examined as to their reputation and reliability? Does that go into this?
I can take that into consideration because it was so hard for us to even find
Okay.
companies
That's why I
to
said it's a
even
naive
quote us.
question.
I think that we were more concerned that we could even find somebody that would write us the policy.
Should that be a concern? I'm asking out of ignorance, remember.
Yeah, that would maybe be a Haley question. I am not extremely familiar with directors and officers insurance. This is my first go round on it, so, it's been almost 8 months of trying to even get it,
Okay.
so.
Based on your question though, who is the company? I mean, Bishop Insurance is providing this quote, but who did they get it from?
Well, Intact is an insurance company and RSUI is the other. And I'm not sure what the acronym for RSUI.
Okay.
Does this quote expire?
Yes,
I think that.
we're up against, we can't table this again, or we're gonna have to re-quote it.
This is required, right, under some directors and officers in liability.
No, this is an optional insurance coverage. The liability insurance was what was required under our funding agreement.
But we have discussed the desire for this because these board members, you want this?
Well, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Haley, but this is the kind of insurance that if one of us gets sued individually, you know, we have immunity under the compact, but we still have to retain our own insurance. Because Haley can't represent us individually. And this, I think, would cover it.
Okay. So let me take a look here.
RSUI seems to be a Berkshire Hathaway
Yeah.
subsidiary, so I can't quite tell you what the acronym stands for still, but
Something underwriter. Do you know is Intact Insurance out of Canada?
I don't know the actual details.
Because I'm Googling right now, according to this, if it's out of Canada, it has a A+ rating. If it's one out of the US, it does not. So,
is the one out of Canada gonna cost 25% more? I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
No, I would think, since you bring it up. Do you want to know? I mean, we can, pause action on this till later in the agenda and actually make a call and see if they can tell us if it matters to you. It might, but that would be the way to handle this if we need action today. If you want clarification on that, I would just say we'll pause on this, move on, and then, you know, have staff make a call to Bishop and see if they can tell us, give us some information, about Intact Insurance Company.
I was just curious, I was just trying to answer Ken's good question, but it seems like we've only got two options and one's crazy expensive, so we really just have one option.
Right.
Okay,
And your option would, well, you do nothing, no insurance, or insurance that costs 6,000, possibly 7,500.
Yeah, okay. Roger, sorry, I didn't ask earlier, are you able to see all this material?
Some of it, not all of it, but I've been scrolling back and forth to the website to look at what's posted on the web. So one thing I mentioned before is if the staff could send board members the whole packet in advance, so then we could just, if we're like myself now, if we're remote, then it's a lot easier to just go back and forth to an email or to a separate file than me having to go to the website every time a new document comes up. But I guess since I got the floor, with regard to the insurance, I'm kind of in favor of it. I can recall that Teresa Walsh McDonald was a significant proponent of finding this kind of coverage. And I concurred with her back then. I think it's important that we do have this. But if you guys want to make a couple calls to Bishop Insurance, and table this for an hour and get it answered a couple of questions, that's fine with me too.
Yeah, and that was just a suggestion. I think, Ken and George's point is right on the money as well. Whatever the case is with Intact Insurance, that's difficulty we've had in finding this insurance. We now have this in front of us, so. What are your wishes, board? Are you ready for me to take public comment and move on, or do you want to discuss this some more?
Well, we've dealt with Bishop before, and they're pretty reputable, and seeing how we have only one realistic option, I'm thinking they get a motion, move on.
Okay, so, public comment, no public in the physical audience here, anybody online? Would have any public comment on this, as we prepare to take action?
If anyone online has a public comment, please raise your hand and I will allow you to speak. Saying no public comment.
Hearing no public comment at this time. Board, if you are ready, we'll take action. I'll take a motion on the directors and officers' professional liability coverage that is in front of us.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we proceed with acquiring a directors and officers, professional liability coverage from the Intact Insurance Company.
Motion by Ken,
I'll second.
second by Georgia. So let me do this, Roger,
Yeah, I'm in favor of it.
Georgia,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
and yes by me. All right, approved. Thank you. All right, now on to the exciting stuff, right?
The exciting stuff, so
Whatever that is.
I'll just give you a brief explanation, and this would be, an discussion with Ethan and I believe Blair. So what you have in front of you is an invoice. Very back of the packet. Yep.
Got it.
So this is the invoice. This is, after they reached out to us and said, we have your 180-day registration application money, and this is the amount.
And they need an invoice for it.
And they needed an invoice, and so I will now yield to Ethan.
Thank you. Rhonda put this together, at Blair's request. Blair, I did notice, was one of the folks on, there he is, okay? And, you know, and this will kind of lead us perhaps, you know, unless you had additional budget discussion, into item 5, but this is exactly what it sounds like. It is, an amount that DNRC is, gonna transfer to the board for all of the applications that were received. And this is for the batch of applications that, were submitted, to the DNRC, on, you know, acting on behalf of the board, which was not yet formed. And that was initiated on the effective date and went for 180 days after that, at which point folks who had state-based water uses of a certain unregistered type were allowed to file a registration form. And I hope that adequately does describe this to me. I think it's important right now because given the balances that you saw in our bank accounts and the uncertainty about the funding agreement, you know, this will be probably the next infusion that we might get. And I think it's, I believe, a couple weeks, what we were expecting time-wise, but Blair is here and might be able to speak to that.
Blair, do you have anything to add to that introduction?
Thank you, Chairman and the board and Ethan. Yeah, I can answer any clarifying questions. I think Ethan has it correct. The last update we got from the finance office, who's really busy right now because it's the legislative session, was they hope it's going to be processed, which means fully, deposited to FRWMB within 2 weeks. And that was a couple days ago. So I'm going to keep getting updates from that finance office, and whatever I hear, I'll update you all.
Okay. Haley, have you seen this?
This
Any-
is first time I'm seeing the invoice itself, but I did have a conversation with Ethan on this, and also saw communications from Blair on the matter
Okay, the
too.
language of the invoice is good.
The invoice looks fine.
So with that, I guess we need action on this?
No, this is just for information.
Oh, okay. Well, any questions?
Well, if I'm doing the math right, this gets us in the black for 16 weeks. So.
It's how government operates nowadays.
All right, since you don't need action, unless there are any other questions, well, thank you, Blair.
Well, he's gonna stick around a little bit, cause I'm gonna, at your prompting, we'll speed on to the further discussion about state-based registrations and an update, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman.
We're on to that, let's do it.
All right. Blair and I did not have a planned attack on things, so Blair, if you need to interrupt me to interject, please do feel invited to do so. Generally, one of the things that we could start off with, though, is that Blair did convey to us the DNRC chain of custody letters, which should be in your packet. Not the finance packet, but your other packet. And so everybody would have a copy of there's two letters. One is a letter that would accompany each of the 180-day registrations that were discussed with that invoice. And then the other one would accompany all of the filings that had occurred before the effective date but were not processed by the Montana DNRC. Oftentimes we would call those suspended state-based registrations. And if you'll remember, kind of had that, the two groups suspended and pending. And so those letters, we appreciate Blair and DNRC for getting those together. They gave us a chance to review. Haley did see those, and we did not have any comments or concerns with any of the language. And so I can give you a minute if you'd like to talk about your hard work there, Blair.
Sure. Thank you, Ethan. The process was just drafting between myself and some others, and also has some language that was reviewed by the DNRC attorneys for water resources. And we're hoping that this is going to work. And if there's anything else you want me to explain about the idea behind the purpose of these custody letters, I can also get into that.
You seen them?
Yes.
Yes, I have a question, and maybe it's a silly question. So the invoice we just saw was for the 180-day batch. Would that concept not apply to the suspended registrations?
I did mention to Blair that you might bring that up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. That was a good question. I do have, oh, sorry, my dog. Working from home today because I'm sick. Excuse me. Yeah, I can answer that question. So the 180-day registrations were not going to be collected by the DNRC originally. On paper, they were supposed to be collected by the Flathead Reservation Water Management Board. Of course, the board was not set up at the effective date of the compact. So there was an agreement made right after the compact that the DNRC would collect these registrations, do this pre-review process, which I can get into some more detail, but basically going through and trying to find deficiencies that the applicants had on their forms that weren't for the eligible uses of each form. And then we would transfer the registrations and fees to FRWMB, that's what that invoice is for. For the suspended registrations, those were collected by DNRC between 1999 and 2021. And during that time, there wasn't a clear idea, I'm sure, as you all know, about if there was going to be a board or what kind of administration there was going to be for water rights on the reservation. So there was never a agreement made up that the DNRC would be able to transfer those funds. And basically, just like any other registration fee that DNRC collects, it was put into the larger fund with all the other off-reservation applications, and it was used. It was, revenue to pay all the compliance technicians that do all this processing work. So because there's no written document, the DNRC Finance Office legally cannot transfer any of these funds. And the funds have been used that were collected from 1999 to 2021.
I hear you. Thank you. Is there any interest? I mean, legally, do you think there's any possible way of getting that?
No, I'm not gonna go down that road.
Yeah, that would be a legislative action, and in this climate, my guess is we'd never see it anyway. So. Political climate. Any other questions on these letters? So with the letters in hand, have the files physically transferred them now?
Mr. Chairman, I can keep talking a little bit, and Blair will help to corroborate my understanding of things, if you would, Blair. But with the custody letters, that will now, I believe, allow DNRC to do what we would consider a rescanning project, where they would add the custody letters. They will also, for some of the suspended water rights, I had in particular requested, and I believe that DNRC agreed, that they would have a copy of the suspended water right abstract, because some of those have been out and in circulation for such a long time. People are used to seeing them. But once these registrations meet their final transfer, they get shifted in the database to an F type of FRWMB, short for F type water right. And that would forevermore change the header and the format of those water right abstracts. And so we would never be able to replicate things that people had perhaps historically seen, perhaps used for purposes of making purchases of their property and so forth. So that would be another step in addition to the custody letters. Then I do believe DNRC will also add their pre-review information to each file. And then that, along with the scanned application information that's already out there, will get all kind of a refresh scan, and then that poises DNRC to make the final transfer. Blair, please do correct any of my incorrect assumptions on that.
Thank you, Ethan. I think you covered it well. The pre-review is a combination of what we call work copies, which is copies made of the original file, and then handwritten notes, things like maps and marking the corners of the place of use of a water right. And then the pre-review spreadsheets, we're calling them. They're very large Excel files, and we have one for both the 180-day registrations and the suspended registrations, of which there's about 1,400 applications for each of those types. And that has comments and marked deficiencies, and there's a summary tab that explains everything. So that will be provided to the board as well.
Thank you, Blair. And then we were tentatively looking at the 1st of April, the first part of April. Is that are we still on track for possibly starting a transfer of things under that timeline?
Yes, I think as long as these custody letters are approved by the board, they're approved by DNRC and CSKT, and then we will be able to start doing the rescan process that Ethan was just talking about. I have a meeting with Nancy Hughes from DNRC on Friday to talk about that process. But last time we met, she was expecting 1 to 2 weeks to go through all that paperwork. It's just a lot of putting the right pages in the right order, a lot of printing, a lot of scanning. And yeah, if we were to start that soon, I'm hoping by early April at the latest, we'd be able to transfer everything.
Thank you, Blair. And Mr. Chairman, does that get at the question you had brought up of the when we would expect to see some of the transfer happen? And as a reminder, you know, we have made plans with your legal counsel in Helena. They have an area with the file cabinets, and so that is still in order. So the logistics are all really starting to fall into place for the transfer of this large number of files.
And we have an MOU in place about the transfer between your office and Ethan's office.
Correct,
When you send batches.
correct.
I have a couple questions. Anybody else have questions? Just to touch on the virus part of this, not to get fully into the database, but, well, where are we with virus and how this transfer will affect that?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, board members. So what we have chosen to do, because these water rights, once this transfer happens, will become, like I mentioned, this F-type right, and now hold the heading of the board in the office of the engineer. Our decision has been to have this scanned information out there and available to the public, but we are currently going to suppress the water right abstract that would normally print when somebody looks up a water right, because these are pending, because they are suspended. And by the way, I did get some of your input on this that has led to this determination, just so as a reminder. But then what we will do is, as we go through and we get these things processed and they either go through and they are either approved as they are, or modified and approved, or potentially rejected, we will take that formal status change in the virus, at which point it will become live. And so the status that we'll be managing, you know, as the public record moves forward, will be held until our office actually has the appropriate time to review, because we have not put the information that is going to come to us into the database. And it was generally this board's encouragement that we would not put things out there until we touched, reviewed, and took our appropriate actions. So that's what we're looking at. In terms of what the virus can do right now, it's pretty functional. We have the ability at this point, for the most part, to work on these, to modify the information, to move them forward, to issue as is or as modified actual water right documents, and those issuances and the corresponding water right abstracts would be to the formats that you've seen, that you've agreed were appropriate for this organization. And so that's where we're at. It's a pretty good spot. You know, we do have like one kind of a remainder item that's not related to wireless that will require your attention for the full implementation, for us to move forward with these state-based registrations. And that is that you will see some water policies and procedures coming your way that are specific to the state-based registrations, and how our office is going to need to add some details to the guidance and direction from the ordinance for us to be able to move forward, similar to what we did with the domestic allowances. And so we are working on that in earnest at this point. And those are all the things that I had on my list to talk about with the state-based registrations, but certainly ask me more questions, Mr. Chairman, board members, if needed.
Well, I'm gonna reach into the virus stuff just a bit more. Where, and let me just ask it this way, where do you stand, where do we stand with regard to, I think it's called the permissions and what access we have versus what access the state has within that database, and what does the long-term future of that look like? Because I know, at least in my mind, maybe I'm the only one, long-term, I'd like this continue to be on the record that regardless of how it's being developed and prepared now with permissions, long-term, I'd like to see us continue to move toward an independent database. How and whether that can happen, I don't know, but I'd like to be clear that that's what we want. It would be a good long-term goal. And I say it partly because, as always, you go down the one path with these kinds of projects, and without having that clear long-term, you get to a certain point within the development of this process, and they could easily say, well, we're too far along, we can't do that now. So I'd like to, if you guys are, I don't think it requires any action, but at least in discussion, it's always in my personal interest, but that's just me. So otherwise.
Mr. Chairman, under the Office of the Water Engineer, I had planned to give you a wireless update. I'm very ready to give you that update right now. If you'd like to just go ahead and transition into hearing about where we're at with the wireless project, and I would happily offer some thoughts about what you just mentioned, if you'd like.
This one here? Sure.
All right, Mr. Chairman, board members, in wireless updates, I am happy to let you know that James and Kathy have handled major database testing, and including angular testing, which is a fancy database term to make sure all the widgets are moving forward. I really, we owe them quite a gratitude. They are now reviewing updated stories for an array of permissions issues and loose ends. And so that's kind of the ongoing work that is happening. I have been attending more of the permissions meetings, more wireless meetings in general to manage the permissions issues, because I am aware that you and the rest of the board members are concerned about permissions, and I am doing my best to champion your concerns through that, from this board's direction into that technical process. I can tell you that we are continuing to meet on this permissions matrix, is what I have often called it. It is a spreadsheet that talks about every element of every part of every water right, and we need to go through there and check what we have control over. And this is in particular to a certain group of water rights that would be considered state-based water rights that these are different than those F-type water rights. The F-type water rights are the ones that we see in our forms and our procedures that have our heading. The struggle we were having on permissions is which modifications we can make to these other water rights without creating a new version of that water right. Okay, now a new version is created when you do a change authorization or a significant action. However, many water right administration activities require making changes to elements on the original version or whatever the most active version is that we might not have issued. So we are working through that. There are complications in that. Most of our complications are in relation to, statements of claim. Because, statements of claim and the elements of statements of claim, many of those things, DNRC is actually, locked out of, except for key personnel who are operating under the jurisdiction of the Montana Water Board, okay? And so your average new appropriations, person in the DNRC does not necessarily have full access to modify a lot of those things that would require, court activity or, operation under the specific Supreme Court rules for adjudication. And so, you can understand that is a sensible thing that we would have to manage. That is a challenge, for both DNRC and us. I don't think in that particular instance that, we, feel as if, there's an impasse, in terms of not getting access to something that we thought we would need to get access to. And in fact, the more common types of corrections that would maybe need to happen, we're good to go on those. The things that would normally need to go through adjudication, we will be, forward-going, we'll be locked out of those items until.
So the court settles.
Yep, so, there's an until button in there, and that until button, applies to DNRC as well. And their new appropriations and, folks that, so, not to try to speak on behalf of DNRC, but that's the general gist of things.
But until and unless the permissions process is completed, you're feeling comfortable that we have adequate access to and we're able to use the database how we need to.
Mr. Chair and board members, I do believe that we are finding the resolution that is needed for us to gain the access to these permissions for the state-based rights with a small handful of argument areas that we're working through still. And those, we'll talk more about those. Right now, however, it has been determined, especially from me, especially from the compact implementation program manager, that there is an essential need for us to get these bigger blocks of permissions done right now. And some of that also, I'm gonna let you know, goes the other way. Because at present, the way the permissions were written, DNRC has been locked out of all of the F-type water rights. So a DNRC person cannot go in and modify an F-type water right. And so we just recently had to write a database story that would help the developers create a pathway so that DNRC can do ownership updates to water rights that we issue. And we very much need that to occur. Not only is it set forth in the compact that DNRC would handle those water right updates, ownership updates on fee lands, but we don't have a good mechanism to coordinate with information from the Department of Revenue that would indicate that there have been property transfers. So not only is it a good thing for the folks that we're issuing water rights to allow an automated process to do ownership updates. It is part of the compact, and we seem to be, I think, headed down a good path at present to get that arranged. It may be as soon as April that some of those ownership updates are happening on our water rights. I have pushed for that because when you lose the administrative edge on correct ownerships, things get lost in that kind of a shuffle. And DNRC is fully aware of that as well. So they've been supportive to try to get those things moved along also. I will also tell you that we've got a lot of traction from DNRC about managing CN numbers. We're excited and we're waiting for Tyrel and Amanda to get their CN numbers. That's probably one of the spots where we could get some improvement. And it'll be one of the spots that, we'll talk about more. And I'm gonna say, I don't know what CN number means, but it is this other than the end is probably the number. But it is this number that every state employee, every contractor for the state has, that then puts them into this system so that they can go through the security setup, right? That includes an agreement, that includes, you gotta put an app on your phone, it's a security app, you gotta download a state, VPN, virtual private network, link, and you gotta get up, it's an elaborate but needed set of securities to get anybody who's gonna be able to operate on the innermost sanctum of water rights information into the system. And so that is proceeding, and we are, it's a little clunky, our system that we have so far, but it is working.
Thank you.
We're actually we've made some huge headway on the wires at this point, and the fact that we can issue water rights, our own type of water rights is a real win for us, and it is gonna allow us to finally tackle the real work that we all know has been hanging out there for 2 years, while this office got set up, which is the state-based registrations. And we know that, coming right behind them will be the tribe registrations. And so, it's essential to do what we can to keep that moving forward. We will, need to interact again with the state on an MOU about our access to that database. And what I would like to do is try to see if we can do our best job to create an MOU that helps to, address this board's need to have some independence, and some long-term, commitment from the state about access to the database.
Any other questions? So other than that, all of the water rights that this office can issue, we're able to do.
We got, like, I'd say 95% functionality.
And so that 5% limits us to not doing what? Roughly.
We're still, working through some items on an ability to add and modify contacts. We have a little bit of a formatting change that's gonna happen. It'll take place in April, for some of the header information, minor stuff.
But
Sorry to.
no, that's okay.
Yeah.
That kind of answers, I guess. So if somebody walks in the door, they want to apply for something here, there isn't anything that we have authority to process we can't do.
There are a few water right types that we cannot manage right now, and a few water right activities. So one of them would be tribal trust transfers. That's something that we have not gotten into, and as a reminder for everybody, a tribal trust transfer is the compact allows the tribes when they acquire new lands that they're going to put into tribal trust, an option to convert any of the water rights that are pertinent to the land to become tribal water rights. And that is our office who is in charge, required to manage that process. We don't have that, there's a handful of them. The vast majority of stuff that we have, that we have moving forward, is pretty good to go. We do have some additional work on permits and changes that needs to occur. We also have some additional policy work on permits and changes that need to go forward before we can, jump through those hoops as well. But for the most part, our day-to-day operations are about to become, a huge shift from working outside the box to working inside the box.
That's what I'm after hearing. So any other questions?
I guess I have one.
Yeah.
When you mentioned having a separate virus database, and as you unpack that, Ethan, and thank you for the good description. Because I'm not that familiar with virus. I didn't know if you got your question answered. In the sense that, will there be in the future a clearly separate database for the FRWMB?
Yeah, I don't think it's answered. I'm more concerned now that we're on the record that that's what we want.
Gotcha.
I don't know that they're gonna answer that. I think they're just gonna move forward with this process we're dealing with. I think as we get more complete though, when we get toward the end of the completion of the permissions process, if the board wants to take a real hard stand on it, we should at least make sure that they know, everyone knows what our position is, and whether we can get to that, I don't know. But I think that has always been my vision about that. There may be some things about it we can't ever do. For example, the fact that, not only we're talking about permissions, but there's a piece of this that the state's gonna have long-term control over, and we're gonna have to be working with them, joined at the hip, and that's the, changes, those ownership changes. They're gonna be doing those anyway. There's a piece of that, for example, we're never gonna do, just because that's the way it's written into the compact, unless the compact changes. But I'm thinking otherwise, generally, I'd like to see us get to that.
I think it's a really seminal question and an important one to raise and to ask, and I think now is the time to ask it and to go on the record as saying this is a desire of the board. Is it possible then to also explore a risk assessment? For instance, if we cannot have that, what risk does that expose us to or not? And I don't know the answers to that question, but I
Or
think,
what that would look like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Cause I keep thinking, we're talking with really one party, the state. And I don't know, Ethan, Haley, if you guys have had any of this conversation about the database with the tribes, and where do they sit with this? Would they support us in this idea? I just don't know answers to those questions, but I think that we will try to get answers.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Chairman, board members, what I'm gonna really try to get you to, think about as a way, it would be very difficult to have a complete standalone database. And so the integration with things like the water court and this reservation are fundamental. That's why I think the compact sought a unitary administration, and why I think that finding a home in the existing WIRES databases is probably the ultimate way to go on this. But that said, I don't think that the board needs to waive our ability to have some independence within that. And to also let you know, as we talk about permissions, the permissions are in fact a two-way street. And so that we have gotten already parts of this database that the state cannot come in and change. They have a high level of database manager who, can get in there, but for the most part, these fundamental pieces that we work on and that we control are going to be locked. That door has got a turnkey on both sides. And so we're trying to find, which keys everybody has to have through these doors, and so that we can get the work done. But because people have water rights on and off the reservation, because this system is tied in to these ownership updates, this probably is really the most practical way for us to operate, but it doesn't mean that we have to take a backseat. And so I will continue to strive to
handle the board's, desire to get, independence within that system.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Well,
I don't know. Thanks, Ethan.
Certainly.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. So I kind of would like to echo Ethan's summary in that the authors, it's pretty explicit in the compact that the database to use was the set up with the DNRC database. It specifies that. And I think the authors of the compact probably did that because they recognize, as Ethan was saying, the enormous task and cost to establish an independent database. For instance, even that ownership update thing is tied to a whole separate program with the realtors when they complete a real estate chain or real estate sale. It automatically flags the water rights associated with that parcel that they need to have an ownership update. So there's just an immense amount of detail and complexity to that database. And I think there'll be probably a few little bumps along the road as we continue to go down this path. But it seems like most of them are getting resolved. And as Ethan mentioned too, some of the things, for instance, with new permits and changes, we haven't yet developed our policy on that. So hence the DNRC, they can't set up something until we have our own internal structure set up. So then that can then be processed in the DNRC database. So anyway, I would be reticent myself to go down the road of having an independent database just because of it could easily take 3 or 4 people to manage something and set something like that up. And the cost could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. So anyway, that's my thoughts on it.
I appreciate that. Maybe it's just me. And I know that we're gonna be attached at the hip with the state and what they're doing with this database and in several components. I don't, discount that at all. Just that within that process, if this board is going to manage and operate this ordinance, as the compact also says, we're responsible for, it would be, I think, beneficial to be as independent as possible. So that's all. Thank you. Item number 6, board business, 6.1. We have something new.
Something
Haley.
shiny and new.
Yeah, Haley.
So yes, board members, you have an appeal, your very first appeal. As you may recall, the Office of the Engineer heard a formal complaint in early January. That complaint process was resolved by the final decision of the engineer. And as a reminder, with the final decision of the engineer, any party to that decision has 30 days from the issuance of that decision to appeal to the board. So that is what you have before you. The sheet that was included on the website and in your packet is a sheet that was issued to the parties. It is the appeal notice.
We're talking about in this plastic sheet in your folder.
So there was one sheet that was included in the manila envelope.
Okay.
I'll get to the clear packet in just a bit. This is what was issued to the parties. It's an appeal notice. if you will recall, we created the operating rules and procedural rules for appeals a long time ago. So this is just a recall, if you will, on this. But this is required under our procedures for appeals, to issue an appeal notice to the parties. All it says is that a notice of appeal was received by the office from one of the parties, and that the board will essentially take it under consideration and set a conference to discuss the appeal. So that's what that document is. What I have provided for you today, and what is not included in your manila envelope, mainly just to keep the separation from the office of the engineer and the board, now that it is under the board's purview, is your own little packet to take home of the important documents for you to review before we set the conference date. So what's included would be the appeal notice that you just saw, the actual notice of appeal, the final decision of the engineer, and the formal complaint that was originally filed. So those are all the documents that are of most importance. I will be sharing with the board members a share file link that will have the entire record in it. I just didn't want to print it off because it's quite a bit of documentation for here, so you will receive that after today's meeting. But I would advise you all to really sit down with the documents that are in this clear packet here prior to the conference that we will set today in this meeting.
Will we get a copy of the transcript of the actual hearing?
It is in the record, yes, yes. It's a good question.
We'll take time to review this now in terms of process. The next thing we need to do is set a date for that hearing. But before that, we want to have, and I don't know if a discussion about that and setting that would be an open session or executive session, but another session specific.
So far,
Discussing this and then setting the conference or hearing date.
the parties haven't requested a hearing date yet.
Correct.
The
So,
question is whether or not we want to hold one or make a decision based on the record.
so let me just clarify how this works procedurally. So the appeal notice was sent to the parties. We're discussing the fact that the appeal was filed with the board here in this meeting. The next step would be to set a closed executive session to have conference on, you know, how the board feels on this appeal itself, the actual meat and, you know, potatoes of what's in the appeal. That will be done in an executive session, which is called conference. That would not include the hearing, or in this case, this is actually considered an oral argument, not a hearing. The hearings are before the engineer and before this appeal. So at that date, we would discuss, does the board want to actually have an oral argument? Is there additional evidence that the board would like from the parties? Because as it stands, the appellant in this particular appeal did not request oral argument. The appellee does have 10 days from the date of receiving this, which, by the way, this was electronically served on them, so by email. So from February 27th, it would be, I just calendared it. Give me 1 second. It would be March 10th would be the date that the appellee could request for argument. And those instructions were sent out via the contact email for the board. If you don't hear from that, the board can request argument on its own of the parties. The board can also request that additional evidence is filed in front of it as well, if the board feels that the record is not clear. So the next step would be to set a date for an executive session to discuss the appeal.
And does that need to be done before the 10 days is up?
It can be.
What time is it?
But it doesn't need to be.
Does not need to be.
Yeah.
Correct.
Oh, good. 'cause-
So we need an executive session to discuss this and decide if you want to make a decision based on record or hold oral argument. And we're not deciding that today. We need that executive session to do that.
Correct.
So that maybe gets us a little bit to our meeting schedules. We had tentatively set the next meeting for what, the 19th
The 18th.
or the
It was a
18th,
Tuesday,
but
yes.
whether it matters for you or not, Ethan's out during that period. Maybe whether we hold any other business or not, that date could be used for that executive session to, discuss this notice.
I'm gonna be out that whole week.
I'm here, but I'm obligated to participate in an SKC event. On the 18th.
So the 18th is looking to be like a bad day regardless. And maybe that's a bad week regardless. So,
Unless the government shuts down, then I will, you don't know.
yeah. So
That's right. that's scheduled for-
somebody want to throw out a date? I can throw one out, the 25th.
Works for me, I'm here then.
And this conference can be done online as well. So don't feel like we need to all be in person. I mean, for the 25th, I will not be in town, but I can appear remotely.
25 is good for me.
But we were originally gonna have just a regular meeting. So we can decide whether or not you want to continue to have a regular meeting then, or just do the executive session. But, 25th. How does the 25th look, Roger?
I can do the 25th.
George?
Yeah.
I'm okay.
So you guys want to have a regular meeting as we were originally planning? And then include as part of that the executive session for this? Or you want to just do a single purpose meeting?
I think just from my perspective with my calendar, like I'm technically supposed to be on vacation that day, but I will make it work for a executive session to discuss the appeal. I think Ethan and I had an alternative date for the regular meeting that would work for at least both of us.
And what is that?
Ethan, did you write that written down? Somewhere,
That would be the 27th.
27th, yeah, okay. So just 2 days after that.
And I can't be here for that one.
We can, I can't.
I cannot, I have
Okay.
to register students.
How's the 27th look as for a possible regular meeting, Roger?
Yeah, I can do the 27th.
Can? Yes, sure. Okay. So potentially, we're looking at an executive session on the 25th and a regular meeting on the 27th. Potentially, so. Haley, if you're on vacation, you're on vacation all that week.
No, just through the 26th.
I see. So then the other option is to do an executive session as part of the regular meeting on the 27th.
I'm fine with doing an executive session on the 25th. I just can't commit to an entire, 4 or 5 hours worth of.
Yeah, okay, but that'd be just the question for the rest of the board. Do you want to do one meeting or two?
I think I want to do two, because I don't have a good feeling of how long the executive session is gonna take.
Okay. You good with that, Roger?
Yeah, I agree with Ken, yeah.
Georgia?
Sure.
Georgia, okay.
And would that be Zoom or would it be here?
Go with whatever you guys want. I prefer to do it in person as much as possible. I know that you won't be here, though, you may be Zoom for you.
I can be here.
I prefer it possible in person too, but I could do Zoom.
Yeah,
I can be here.
okay, we'll do it in person. Roger, you good with that?
I'm on Zoom, but I can do it.
On the 25th?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so let's set a time for the 25th.
I like 1 o'clock.
Me too.
What was class start?
First.
Oh, okay.
So proposed 1 o'clock, we're good, Roger?
I think so. Let me take a quick look real quick.
George?
25th, 1 o'clock's good.
Sure. It's a Tuesday.
Okay, George is good, you guys good? Okay, 25th. At 1 o'clock. The conference / executive session to discuss this appeal notice. On to the 27th. So we'll make that a regular meeting, same time, 1 o'clock. And the 27th, we will do a regular board meeting at 1 o'clock. Ethan, all of that sound okay?
Yes, sir. I got the 25th, March 25th, Tuesday at 1 o'clock, probably until 3. And we'll figure out, here at the office, we'll assign you a staff member that's not me to help usher the Zoom meeting along.
Okay.
And, because I'm hearing that the board would like to meet in person, right?
Well, and executive sessions, you've been, Haley, sorry, point, doing minutes or keeping notes for those, you'll do that for that meeting as well?
Yes, I will.
All right,
And we'll figure out a good way for you to have, space and a little bit of as much computer assistance as you need. Okay? And
yeah, that's helpful, because I mean, it's a executive session, but we do need staff assistance to pull this off, because it's a conference for this notice, so. Yeah.
Right, and I'm under the impression that it's mostly me that you don't need here, right?
Yeah, I mean, or any staff who you had, do some research for you
Okay,
with the decision, correct?
okay. Yep, I think I can make that happen. I do have one staff member that has done some
So given-
records organization, but no research. So I think that's what, I think Amanda is gonna be your person, to, assist you with the Zoom meeting.
What will we do with the rest of the staff that day?
They're smart, they'll figure it out.
You'll figure it out.
Yep. Yep.
What I can say, is there any reason staff can't sit in on that?
I would prefer not to have staff there, just
As-
really
that-
trying to keep the separation
You got it,
here.
all right,
Yep.
sounds good. All right, guys, for that day, you'll figure it out, boss says.
And in the meantime, if any board members have questions for me, feel free to reach out to me. I'm available to have a conversation about it.
Does Roger have this packet?
Yes, I emailed it to him.
Okay. So, as you go through it, Haley's open to comment, to questions, so give her a buzz or email. Anything else on the hearing?
Nope.
Notice, okay. 6.2, vehicle storage agreement.
So there should be a 2-page agreement, in your manila envelope. This came out of the, kind of question on where to keep the board truck.
Yep,
This conversation happened quite a bit ago on, asking George if he could check with Safety of Dams, since
Yeah.
they've got that lot. So this is just the essential memorialization of that idea.
And when I did check on it, I checked with the person that was in charge and, he's taken a different position, but he's still in charge, so. And I talked to him again and there's no problem.
Perfect.
A different
And we have-
job position, not a
Yeah,
different position
on
on the
the
agreement.
agreement.
Okay, I'm just-
I was
It's
trying to
like-
call that, but it's there.
All right, yeah, good.
I'm good at confusing things. I
So
think I
given
practiced
that
it.
this is a agreement
Mhm.
here, George or Haley, does this need to run through official travel channels too, or?
That has a CSKT Safety of Dams
Mhm.
signature, and can I just take this and get it
Yes.
signed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so after board discussion and approval from the board today, then we would just need sign off from an official at Safety of Dams, so,
Okay, yeah, okay, no, what do you worry about that?
yeah. We have a perfect point person for that. So I mean, quickly going through it, this is not a complicated agreement at all. It essentially, the recitals just state that there is a vehicle, that the board owns, that Safety of Dams has this, vehicle lot that we could house the vehicle in, that there's a desire to put it in that lot. And then under the agreement, there are considerations to, house the vehicle within that gated lot when it's being, used, so taken out of the lot for office of the engineer purposes. Also a consideration for, privately owned vehicles. So for example, let's say Ethan were to take his vehicle over to that lot and swap it out for the truck.
Yeah, just needs a place. to park,
Correct,
yeah.
but I put in there that it does need, that particular piece does need to have notification to the supervisor, at least that, you know, that privately owned vehicle is gonna be over there. Just some other little things in here about, if it's locked, then just abiding by the rules and policies of Safety of Dams and how they operate their lots. And then the term is unique, right, because I put on there that it will continue until the board is able to construct a building with its own vehicle lot or procure property which contains a lot. So it's not intended to last forever. I mean, I think the board's intentions are to get its own property and building and such, but we aren't there yet. So this is the solution in the meantime. There's a section on insurance, meaning that the insurance for the vehicle itself is going to still be the board's insurance. So Safety of Dams should not be concerned with any destruction of the vehicle or damage to the property. If there's any damage or destruction done to the lot, that can be worked out in that way. So that's essentially all this agreement is.
So we won't sign today, we just take action that we want to propose this agreement,
Yes.
and then.
Yeah, I can get it
George
signed
can-
over
George
there and
can-
get it to you.
Well, when you say get it signed, says Safety of Dams, I know the system enough that usually administration and or a lawyer needs to get their eyes on these, so I don't know if that's, you guys will do that.
Yeah, they'll let me know.
Okay, so,
One comment that I do have is the gated part.
Yeah.
Over there is pretty small that they keep, work vehicles in. Most vehicles are parked outside in a row,
Oh, yeah, okay,
and, we have a large parking lot, but we have cameras all over the place.
okay,
And we've used them before, but we've had thievery going on, and we've actually caught the person by reviewing our cameras.
sure.
Yeah,
Uh,
we have them in the office, in the compound, or everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the case, then I can just change the language to be the vehicle lot, not the gated vehicle lot, so
Then you
that it
wouldn't have the key
encompasses
problem,
everything,
you know,
right?
Cause, I think there's just a few people that have that key for that
Okay,
particular compound,
yeah, that's good information to know, so I can easily make that change.
but it's all quite safe out in the whole thing there.
well, should we actually take action today or wait until we hear back? I mean, if we have consensus to move this forward, is that enough?
Why don't we do consensus today on if you're okay with the agreement in itself? Let's hear back from Safety of Dams, a representative or legal, whoever. Once we hear back from them, we'll put it on the agenda again for board
All
action.
right, sounds good. Do we,
And I'll
So-
take care of this tomorrow.
okay, Roger, have you seen this?
Yeah, I took a look at it. I'm good with it, and I thank George for all his efforts in in making the process happen.
Yes,
George, are you good?
absolutely.
Ken? Yes. George?
Mhm.
All right, you have consensus. Move this forward to propose. So no board action today. That includes board business. Item number 6, I say we take a break.
Ready?
Take a break. Thank you. So, item number 7, Office of Water Engineer, office updates.
Mr. Chairman, board members. Let's see, what have I got for you today? We can start off with a document that you've got, which is our standard water rights update. What you'll see is our February application received number was actually kind of low, but we received a lot of Part Bs, which means that we're gonna start doing some issuing. We're pretty excited to do some issuing, and that's gonna be some of our new focus on the water rights front. The other thing, we were just talking on break, we might make a modification to this a little bit because we're seeing a lot of people. As a reminder, we had Scott Owlinger doing letters that he would send out about deadlines. You know, because we were having a lot of people who get their Part A permission and then not follow up with the completion. And so we have had a tremendous amount of traffic about the extensions and people, you know, so not only is that Part B higher because of those letters, but there's also a lot of people who are filing extensions right now. And so maybe on the next one that you see, we'll start tracking the extension filings if that's of interest.
And that would be the Part A extensions,
Yes.
extensions for Part A.
Yeah, there's the extensions, we did the extension form that includes Part A for domestic allowances, Part A for stock allowances, and then permits, right? Is that where we're at? We have 3 items on there?
Yeah.
Okay, and so if you needed to extend a permit, like a project completion for a permit that was originally issued by the Montana DNRC, but was not perfected, the term of art for the project completion phase of a permit, and you can also extend that through our office.
Yeah, add that. If the number is significant, then you think we need to see it, add it. Yeah.
All right, you sound interested at least, so we'll go ahead and
change.
So I also understand the CITT Stockwater grants are coming to a point here that we might start seeing some of those.
Friday, I believe, is their they have their completion. I believe it's on Friday. You know, I obviously, it's mostly what I understand. And so, and we would anticipate that we will make a transition. We've been fielding a lot of preliminary work, and we did pick up a little bit of folks just going ahead and applying for other things that they had, but we do anticipate a little surge. I'm not sure how big that's gonna be, but we'll be putting it on the spreadsheet, so everybody's got a good idea. Sydney's nervous about it. 30 days. I think it'll be a training opportunity for everybody to get real used to the database operations. So
little bit off the subject, do we know any more about the status of the efforts to develop the groundwater protection areas?
I have not heard any updates about that. We did have some dialogue about, you know, just, you know, because we had that, it was hanging out there. We do also have that Flathead system compact water right application as well. We did meet, we do have still a pending item that we needed to get resolved about that application. We've not heard about the groundwater stuff, and what I have heard is it does seem like things are moving forward with some of the piping projects, but you know, in the Jocko. That's, those are the things I know that seem to be the most active. Okay. All right, there's your general water rights, update. I'll give you some staffing updates. Amanda Berens started on Tuesday, February the 18th. Tyrel Fenner started on Monday, February the 24th, and Scott Olinger's last day was on Thursday, March the 27th. Now, to let you know where our time is gone, I'm gonna give you a fairly comprehensive list of the onboarding and training things that have been happening in this office. I do believe that this is an important thing for you to know, that what's happening and what happens when somebody gets brought into the organization. And so, thank you for the time on this. The general onboarding process, there's the OE computer system where we get people set up with the mail, we give them access to SharePoint, we give them the document syncing so that if their computer breaks, their desktop files or their documents folder will automatically be backed up into OneDrive. Then we proceed to get them set up with Microsoft 365 licenses, ArcGIS licenses, Adobe licenses. We go through the state system, we initiate a CN number, and we go through the hoops to get that wireless VPN set up on their computer. We have an equipment sign out, which will almost always at least include a computer, a key, a security code, which I have to also get set up through the security people. We go ahead and assign phone extensions, and we get their computers linked up to Vonage, the phone system, so that if they need to make phone calls using a remote arrangement with their laptop or their cell phone, they can. We go through payroll documents for taxes, for payments, for ACH transfers, for paychecks, and we go through health insurance information and get a distribution. We go have a big discussion about that. Retirement information, there's a packet and a discussion. We talk about the sign up for that. There's the OE personnel policies that get distributed in current form. We talk about that. That usually takes a little bit longer because it's a pretty substantial document, and it is finalized by an acknowledgement form that gets signed off. We have a vehicle use agreement form now, thank you to Haley, and everybody in the office who's using the vehicle has already gone through and signed off on our newly arranged vehicle use agreement form. We set people up with QuickBooks accounts. We have the OE Excel timesheets to track the details and file for mileages if they have mileage reimbursements. We go through a cell phone, bring your own device agreements to get those in place so that folks will get a stipend for their cell phone, and then they put Microsoft Authenticator in there to be able to adhere to our two-factor security system for signing on to the FRWMB system. They have to put the RSA security log on for the state system. They gotta put the QuickBooks onto their phone. They already have ID cards in hands. There's business cards on order. And then today they had a meet and greet with the legal counsel, and we talked about just various things about the legal counsel. And then we have the drafting of position descriptions, which are drafted, and they are presented here for you today for your consensus. And this onboarding, these are just the general administrative onboarding things that happen when somebody comes into this office. This was really handled as a team effort by the group, and a pretty successful go. And just want to let you know that there's a lot of hustle and bustle when we add somebody in. I'll also give you a second. I'll tell you about the general onboarding training, which is actually even more extensive. So people have to go through the water rights and the compact 101 and then 102, and then we're gonna go ahead and keep building up till we get to 301 and 401, so give everybody a copy of the compact, the ordinance, the WPMPs, and give them the first initial overview. we get everybody set up with water, with the online water right tools and tell them about cadastral and the query system, so forth. Get them an introduction to Wireless. There was a full all-staff Wireless training last week. It's great. We have another one on the books. So that's exciting. Kathy and James led that. And then they've been doing flight following during the regular and complex water right application administration and management. So that's kind of the general forward movement. For Amanda in particular, she has helped out by doing some document organization and training for the complaint that got filed. And so she's that's going to be written into her position description to help with hearings and complaints with the office. She's moved into some a more advanced wireless discussion. We envision her leading some of the wireless operations for our office. And then she did quite a bit of public service and direct application support already. Tyrel, he has had discussions towards what we envision with him for water measurement and agrimetrics. We talked a little bit towards the GIS management work that he's going to be working on, and he's done some hands-on efforts with that to help organize our cadastral layer that we use to set parcel boundaries for the effective date so that we know and can assess what is or is not a development, and that allows us to calculate the total amount of permit exceptions within the appropriate area, which is part of the WPMPs the board has passed. So, that has all happened here in the last couple of weeks, and I'm pretty ecstatic to have worked with everybody here. And I wanted you to know that that is going on and that folks are getting integrated in this pretty extensive fashion.
Oh, I think to speak for everybody, happy to have additional staff. I know you've been looking forward to that.
We have all been looking forward to that, I think. At least at a minimum, if other existing staff weren't looking forward, they were looking forward to me whining less.
Okay.
I just want to say it's fantastic. I think, I mean, that's onboarding and management. Is there like an annual operating plan that you're putting together that you can just give a packet to someone? This is who we are, what we do, why we do it, like a one-page overview of and you open up page 2, it's a list of all the positions, org chart, this is where you fit. You're a Hydro 2, you fit here, this is your roles and responsibilities, which links to the personnel policies. And once you write that from year to year, it's just edits, so it's really simple that you update board members as they change, and phone numbers and points of contact, and in case alarm, call so-and-so, and if in case of someone kicks in the door, call the cops. Just some really basic stuff in what I would call an annual operating plan. And it really just explains who you are, what we do, why you do it. And has a little history of how did we get to this point? 1855, reservation designation, treaty, allotment act, Dawes Act, IRA. Doesn't need to go into super detail of any of that, but it gets into why are you here now? And your position is important for these reasons. You're protecting state-based and culturally based water rights. You're integral to the system. You're an important employee. Is how that all ends. And you've got the basis of exactly that. And I appreciate that. So I'm just thinking out loud here.
Yeah.
But I've done a lot of those where it's just a packet and you update it, and it takes a while to build it, but once you get it, and then it's just a matter of updating names and phone numbers. We use it in fire organizations. We developed it for FIP when I was there. It's part of the onboarding packet, but it's also an annual refresher that this point in time, every spring we go through it. Remember, this is who you are. This is why you do it. This is how we do it. We refreshed all the contacts. Here's all the what ifs. Fire alarm goes off. You pull this button and everyone runs and meets in the parking lot over there. From something that simple to, we live on the reservation, new landowner. and you're explaining there was this thing called the 1855 Hellgate Treaty that designated the reservation. Some really basic things like that of why are we here? And if we can educate our employees on that, that helps answer those questions that come in the door from the landowners. So again, just thinking out loud, but really appreciate what you've done, Ethan, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have all those pieces. We're looking forward to getting the personnel policies buttoned up so that that'll be constructed. And right now, I think we're still putting the car together as we're going down the road, but I'll be happy to have that awning built that you're talking
Yep.
about once we get these details in. And it is on the list of, I have a kind of a big list. Things that need to get incorporated into our day-to-day, and it probably won't quite replace the the verbal transfer of information, because I think that's a highly valuable aspect too, but I think it's good to have that packet together. And if nothing more, just a really good comprehensive list of all the things that need to get done. And the templates are getting in order now for our office, and staff have been helping, like as we go through and get something new, like the vehicle agreement form. Now we've got, the other one is the vehicle agreement form template, so that it's there and it's ready. And we're doing that with all of these other forms and agreements, and we'll put it all in the operating. I like it.
You weren't volunteering to help with that, were you?
I certainly could,
I was just thinking out loud.
yeah. But it's what kind of a one-stop shop for employees. It has the templates of all the different water rights in there. There's the kind of water rights we do, you know, there's 60 A and B and when they are stopped in, now we got a truck with a thing that says, you know, office of the engineer off to the side, and they get questions, and if they don't know them, they go, oh, on page 5, but, you know, it's
Sounds like a
domestic
great
water right
idea.
and
Yeah.
exempt, and
Yeah, sounds like a great goal.
Well, we still gotta get the OE magnet for the truck too. And hats. Vests.
Orange vest.
Any questions?
Just a comment, I think,
Georgia?
well, before you get the magnet or you get this wonderful plan that Shane just mentioned, I think all of you need an extra coffee card or something. I mean, the workload Sydney's got going, we need to all be making sure you're fully caffeinated, so. No, that sounds like a great process and definitely a robust amount of activities for everybody. So are they hanging in there? Need some coffee? Okay, so.
You're not rethinking.
When's my probation?
They don't have one foot out the door yet, so we're good.
We figured we'd just tear the Band-Aid off, you know?
No, we're in a good spot, you know, we've come a long ways in the last couple of years, so yeah, it's all good, thank you.
All right, Mr. Chairman, board members, thank you for allowing that little presentation. Next update I have for you is that, as a reminder, I'll be meeting with the Polson Rotary Club on March 11th. And, oh, sorry, did Roger have his hand up? Oh.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Roger, sorry about that.
Okay, so before we leave the personnel thing, I guess I wanted to bring up, you know, we did have the advertisement out for the hydrologist, hydrogeologist position and did not fill that. So I guess what I would like to see us do now that we've got 2 more employees on board and people are getting situated, it seems like we should re-advertise that position as a hydrogeologist strictly. Given the, you know, climate of what's going on politically right now, there may be people out there looking for jobs. So I guess I would like to see us get something back out on the street. The last advertisement was written as a hydrologist position, but I think we need to restructure that to be strictly a hydrogeologist, because that's the one that's still vacant on our employee matrix. So anyway, I would like to see that happen, as soon as possible.
Roger, I have a question.
Sure.
So, and I really didn't say much before because it was sort of hydrologist slash hydrogeologist, but a well-rounded hydrologist has the capability of dealing with groundwater as well as anybody. So is it, if we say hydrogeologist, or are we limiting ourselves to a hydrologist who may have that background?
Well, I think a hydrogeologist has considerably different training than a hydrologist. Different background, different curriculum in a lot of respects. So, I would say yes, that it needs to be more specific. Unless, I've seen a lot of hydrologists go back and retrain to become hydrogeologists, but there are a lot of classes and experience that is particular to that position.
Will we need to rewrite the PD?
Well, it was written more broadly before. I'd like to see it be a little more specific, so yes.
Okay.
I don't think it has to be a wholesale rewrite. It just has to add some specificity to it.
Do we need action, or if we have consensus on that, Roger, can we try to move forward with that? What do you need?
And the reason I bring this up too is because obviously the next steps that we've been still trying to get to are now getting procedures and methods for doing new permits, which include both groundwater and surface water and changes. But a lot of those groundwater are going to be strictly groundwater applications, especially for a lot of the municipalities. So, so that would really help if we had somebody on board then that could have the background to work on that.
The advertising of that, rewriting of that, advertising of that, do we, I'm just wondering about process here. It's not on the agenda for action, so if we, can we, how do you want to handle that? I mean, it seems like the consensus to move forward to rewrite the PD. Does this require action to get it advertised?
I would think we could just give Ethan the direction to move forward with that. And if you want to do it by consensus, I guess to me that would be sufficient.
Roger made the motion for consensus. I agree. Ken agrees.
I agree too.
Georgia agrees. George agrees, I agree, so let's move forward with that, rewriting of that and getting it advertised.
Will do.
Thank you, Roger. I do see a couple items, 7.2, under that, you had some position descriptions. Are you gonna get to those?
I am gonna get to those. I
Okay,
am
all right, I'll
closing in on it, but I wanted to also let you know that we have initiated a tracking process to figure out how many and who all walks in and phone traffic and things like that. And although we're all a little bummed because there's a tedium to having to track things like that, we think it'll be valuable information for us for operations.
TEM?
Sorry, what?
tedious. Oh, tedious.
Yeah.
He said tedium.
Tedium.
Not
We are
not TDM.
hearing the tedium, yes. All right, so, but I wanted to let you know that we're working on that. We also have taken some time to organize some of the office equipment and furnishings, assess needs, update inventories. We're gonna provide you with a list of surplus items and probably on the next meeting. And we'll be looking for your direction on how to get rid of that stuff. And then before we get to the last item, which would be the position descriptions, on our IT front, let you know that I did the yearly update to our FRWMB.gov domain. So we're in good standing to keep our organizational domain up and running and maintain our government status on the interweb. We've got a couple new computers that we just received. We'll be formatting those soon, and we're gonna do some reorganization of our SharePoint. We've had enough people coming in and going. At this point, we need to all sort of sit down and look at our files and just kind of get things a little more consolidated. Because as you can imagine, during the hustle and bustle of board meetings, we create drafts and all sorts of things. And there's a certain point where you gotta just kind of go back and regroup, reorganize, and get rid of some of the old drafts and figure out what we're retaining for the long haul. With that said, before you have two position descriptions. One is listed as a water resource specialist 2, the other is a water resource specialist 2 career ladder. They both are upward minded position descriptions. I will, on the first page, I will bring your special attention into the project assignment table, and that area is to help orient these positions on what some of their emphasis would be. It doesn't mean that we're not gonna retain cross training for all of these things in our organization. However, I do find it useful to have a point person for these kinds of items. So that's kind of what we've got. These have been reviewed by Haley. They've been reviewed by the individual employees who will be operating under these position descriptions. And with that, I'll stand for questions or discussion as is needed.
For the two, so for you two, you've seen them and you're ready to sign on the dotted line? Okay, very good.
So I had a really quick comment.
Let's do it.
You might have a typo on page 2 of both of them.
It'd be unlikely that I wouldn't have a typo.
That was just meant for you, that was just meant for you to find, Ken.
Little Easter egg for you,
Yeah.
Ken.
See if you really.
Yeah.
have it or not.
It has to be used for sure. That is a typo.
Okay.
Thank you.
And it's on both of them.
Pretty, yeah, that's something Haley did.
Well, that was meant for somebody to find, right?
It was, keeping your brain sharp, Ken.
Oh, thank
That's what it is, yep.
So, just for, even if it's only for my own edification, remind me what the difference is. You got one that says dash career ladder.
So we picked Tyrel up, his desired target and what we think will be a good fit for him would be ultimately going through the same process that James Frakes went through. Picked up first and foremost as a water resource specialist, moving through that position and then getting arranged through our office in a promotion plan towards the hydrologist position.
Is that, any of that built into the PD itself?
It is, it's intended to be, yes.
Okay. Questions, comments? Roger, did you see these?
Yeah, I'm looking at them now. I guess I just have one question. We've been trying to move toward a office schedule of 5 days a week, and I see both of these are 4 days a week. So Ethan, you were aware of that. I guess what's the rationale there?
Underneath each one of these, it says, likely to change when the office switches to 5 days a week. And so, as we gear up and get, the training sorted out, and get set up with the staffing plan, then everybody's aware that the target is the 5 days a week. This is what it just sits at today.
Okay.
Other questions? No. No Easter eggs? Hey, you're looking for action on these?
I believe you're, gotta give us some consensus. It does, the,
Agenda says board consensus.
you know,
We don't really normally take public comment on this. And it says public comment, so normally for public action we would, so. All right. Georgia?
Yeah, my consensus.
And yes, George,
Yes.
Roger,
Yes.
yes, you have it. Welcome aboard. Thanks, guys.
Mhm.
Thanks.
that's a wrap for me under the water engineer report.
Both the words pubic and public. You got that. If you just spelled public and the public lands not.
Thank you. So it was my urging that we at least talk about the building planning. I guess I need to be reminded where we were, because I know we put out some information. We had some responses. There were some firms that were willing to sit down and talk with us and begin the planning process. I don't know where we're at with that now, because I don't know if we've done that. Has anybody done that? Roger, you weren't involved in any building planning meetings, were you?
Yeah, we had 2 solicitations or responses to our solicitations. And Ken and Georgia and I met, it's probably been 2 months ago now, on trying to decide who we should interview. If we could narrow it down to one of the 2 candidates and select one, but both seemed equally qualified. So we decided that we should interview both of them, and we haven't gotten to that point yet. I guess that would be our next step. We just need to make that happen.
When you say we, you mean the board?
Well, I guess if you, the question is then, yeah, does the board want to be part of the entire interview process, or just the committee be the interviewees? I don't care either way.
Yeah, just a question, so. Right, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say,
Haley.
just to note, if it's the entire board, it needs to be in a public meeting,
Yeah. Okay,
whereas the committee can meet with them separately on its own time.
okay, thank you. Ken?
Also, I'm kind of leaning towards this board because there's so many different areas of expertise on the board. I mean, you 2 could ask questions I wouldn't even think of. It's just me.
Mm-hmm.
So just a generic question. This is for the design of maybe a futuristic O&E building. Is there any cultural components to the design that we're interested in?
Why not?
And are these companies capable of doing that?
Yeah.
Good question.
That'd be a good question.
If we only got two, that maybe the only two we gotta work, you know, so. But I know the tribe has worked with companies that
Yeah.
have design experiences with cultural components too.
Yeah. So, who met with them? Was it just the two of you?
I
Well,
didn't
one of the
actually-
company, go ahead, Georgia.
Well, I didn't actually meet with them. They had sent information to us, but perhaps Roger, had you met with them in person?
No, we just received statements of qualifications from both companies. One in particular had obviously done a number of designs for tribal offices in the past. I don't remember if the other one did or not, but one had a lot of experience, as Shane was discussing.
Shane?
So my recollection is we went and around and round on whether we put an RFQ or RFP out. Did that get figured out?
I don't know that that got figured out. My personal opinion is I don't know that it matters at this point.
Right.
I think that, you know, the idea is, and again, this is a bit of a convoluted process. We don't have the money to just hire them. What we need to know is how much it's gonna cost for them to actually do some designing for us up front. Do an initial design, which means them meeting with, so at a preliminary stage, they may need to meet with us, whoever we pick, and do some, you know, interviews and come up with that cost. Cause we need to be able to meet with Ethan and staff, be able to meet with us, talk about what we want, what our vision is about this, so that they can give us an initial estimate on what it would take to actually come up with that design. With that estimate, you know, was in my mind that we go back then to the state and tribe and say, you know, this is what it's gonna cost, we need money to do this. Now, they might come back and say, well, you know, take it out of your budget. No, I don't know that we have it in our budget, but that was my initial approach to thinking about this, so. If a couple people can meet with them and are comfortable in explaining that to them and going through that, I mean. That's fine. If you want the board to meet with them, then I think we can still do that. It just has to be an open session, so, Ken's thinking a board. Roger, what are you thinking?
I can go either way, I guess, just in response to Shane's question also. Both companies really responded as if it was a statement of qualification. So, so both similarly responded, but it doesn't matter. Either way is fine with me.
George, what are you guys thinking?
I'm leaning more towards it being the whole board, just to capture everybody's good thoughts. Because I think if just a few of us went into the meeting, we'd report back and somebody'd go, hey, did you ask? And I'd be like, nope. So I think we could just save time by putting it all in one meeting.
Any risk to holding a public meeting? Anybody can think of? All right.
I have two things.
Yes.
So
Kelly.
one, I guess to your risk question, something that could help alleviate that and maybe expedite the process too, is if the board came up with questions that it would like from both of those submissions before the public meeting. So that way, in the public meeting, you're addressing things that the public can know, right? I mean, if there's any other questions that maybe are a little bit more sensitive, then the committee can meet with them afterwards. But that might be a good approach. The other thing I want to mention is I would just encourage the board to have these interviews sooner than later. I will keep harping on the understanding that the sooner the board can get any sort of financial increases or appropriation increases in front of the compacting parties is that'll go loads for the legislative session. So
Yeah.
we need to start thinking earlier about those things.
Yeah, we might have missed that opportunity for this session, but who knows?
Yeah, I mean, transmittal
yeah.
is here,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
we're done.
But this fall is when we need to have
Yes.
ducks
yeah,
together by this fall.
yeah. Well, and it'll depend on how they want to approach actually agreeing to fund it or not.
So just thoughts.
Yeah,
Hmm.
agreed. All right. So when do we want to do this?
Also, just so you know, we had budgeted 25,000 for new office building planning. That budgeting did envision that we were gonna get more of the registration application fees than we received, but it is in our line items for things that we had intended to fund. I hope that helps, Mr. Chairman. You're not starting off at zero on this,
Because I think we all recognize that there'd be no way to engage one of these firms for a significant planning process without having some kind of money.
Thank you. All right. Anyone?
The number that we threw in for that budget to the 25,000, it was not based on any scientific evaluation. It was just a placeholder, I would like to point out. $25,000 will get us some planning. It's not going to get us a design. Typically design costs for engineering services, which would be included in this, are anywhere from 10 to 20% of the building construction. So if we were going to build a $2 million building, we would have to budget somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 to 400,000 for those complete type of engineering services. So this was strictly a planning allotment type placeholder, something to get us down the road anyways, to bring it then to the next step of where we would go.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. Do you want to make this part of the next regular meeting or set a special meeting for that? We shoot for something at this point then in April?
Well, if we're trying to expedite it, it sounds like we need to get it on an agenda, don't we?
I might have missed some parts while I was looking around for the numbers, but is the plan to have both of them show up to a public meeting or one of them show up to a public meeting?
I don't know what you're thinking, guys, but there's only two, so it seems like we ought to set a meeting and have them both come in one after the other.
Or Zoom,
Totally agree.
depending on what their availability is.
We need a point person to reach out, see if they're still interested. We did linger a bit.
Yeah.
So what I can do that, but what I need you to do, Ethan, is send those packets to both packets to all the board members. And then that way people can start to look at those and review them in advance also.
Okay.
But then using Haley's good advice, we need to have a list of questions prepped in advance of that meeting that the two architectural firms or engineering firms have a chance to engage with before the meeting.
I would say, don't want to presume anything, Roger, but maybe as we start down this process, maybe we could just email questions to you and you can collect them for us.
Yeah, sure, that'd be good.
You all right? Or one or two, whatever you think to start with. We can share them. Our next regular meeting is tentatively set now for the 27th. You guys wanna just take up that meeting for that purpose?
Do you think we'll need the whole meeting to enter this?
You know, I would say we give them 30 minutes for a presentation and 20 minutes for questions, and so, you know, an hour each.
That was the number that was in my head, about an hour each. That meeting or some other time?
Say that meeting.
Shane?
So would the idea be they do their presentation at that meeting? And do we ask them the questions we were talking about cold? And they react to them, or do we try to send them those questions ahead of time and they can prepare for it? Because I mean, that, just trying to figure out the timing and sequence of those things. If we're hitting them cold, then we don't need to figure our questions out till relatively late. But if we're trying to, you know, give them some advanced notice, we probably need to get our questions together sooner than later.
I don't know, what do you guys suggest? Shane's asking whether we should prepare the questions and send them in advance or not.
I think we should send them in advance.
Yeah, weren't you advising that too, so the public could see the questions, so.
Well, and also so they would have the chance to actually, you know, give you meaningful answers. That way there's not, I think, Georgia, you mentioned this, where there's not this kind of latency period of, you know, what are we doing with these guys? You'll get the answers at that meeting.
Okay. So we need to, so given that, do we have enough time to put together questions and get it to them before the 27th?
Well, I think we got one question today. There's one.
It'd be pushing it, so let's, let me suggest that following today, you get your questions to Roger as quick as possible. Roger is going to reach out to see if they're still interested in responding. And if we can have, and Roger, then if you get back to us, if we can know, I'm just throwing this out on or before the 12th, if they're interested, then, if we have settled our questions by then we can send them. And that gives them, you know, a couple of weeks to take a look at those questions and get ready, and then, you know, they might have process questions, you know, that they'll have for us ahead of time, but at least I'll get us started. If they're interested, then we can zero in on, you know, maybe the 27th if you want to do it then. Otherwise, a different date in April.
So if you run this through ChatGPT, it gives you 5 questions you should ask. So I can just forward this over to Roger. Yeah. I love it so much. I really do.
I hate it.
You got, and it'll know that too. You gotta feel the love for it and it'll love you right back. It will love you back, Clayton, I'm telling you.
No AI. For me.
But it's got, should I share these real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. What previous experience does your team have with similar successful projects? What level of commitment should I expect on our project? How flexible are you to accommodate project changes? How often can I expect communication from your firm, and what is your communication process? what system of quality control have you implemented? And if those are not good enough questions, I could refine, you know, that to, I just asked a very generic kind of question, but is that kind of in the ballpark of what we're looking to ask them, or does it need to be more specific?
I think in general, those are good. You know, one that's jumped to mind is how do you collaborate with other entities?
Oh, I like that.
You know, because I would expect collaboration with the Kootenai Culture Committee,
Sure.
the Salish Gillespie Culture Committee,
Absolutely.
the Tribal Hippo Office, Tribal Council, as part of that. And they wouldn't know that, but the question is what is your collaborative experiences working with cultural?
Well,
components?
let me throw this out then. I mean, not to argue, I absolutely agree. But given the nature of this board, if we're gonna do that, we almost have to then invite the state to provide that same input.
Absolutely. I don't want to exclude the state, you know. I don't know if they have any specifics in that,
Yeah, those kind of questions, I
but
think, are
it should
good.
be open to them as
There
well.
are a couple of specific questions that I would have in mind, because I think they need to understand, you know, our process in this, in that what we're looking for right up front. We're looking for right up front is a cost for building the design, not the building,
Mhm.
for doing the initial design.
Mhm.
We need that cost. Once we get that, then we can go after the money. And if we can get it, then we can get it, then we can move on. Whether or not we want to spend our $25,000 is, I think, a separate question. I think that's, has been stated, it's pretty small peanuts compared to what it's gonna end up costing in the long run. That's just my thought. So those are kind of spirit questions I would have.
Would it help if I kind of sum up what we've talked about and shoot that out to the group, and then we can build on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do that. If we take this approach by let's say, by the 12th or sooner, if we know that they're interested, then we can decide if the 27th is the target or not.
Okay.
Is that sound fair, rather than trying to nail that down right now? Right. So that in a week, we can decide whether or not 27th is a target. If it is, then we can let them know.
When I see if they're still interested, I can ask them about a schedule too. You know, this is the time of year when everybody's ramping up again for the summer season, so.
Yeah, and yeah, their input will be important to that schedule. The other thing is that dawns on me is they've both responded. We need to see their packets in terms of building our questions, because they may have answered some of the general questions already in the initial response,
Yeah,
which they put in writing.
but all of those questions Georgia brought up are good questions.
And I came up with none of them. Just.
Yeah, you did. You asked
Took
whatever
intelligence
that
to
is.
ask artificial intelligence.
It does the, what is it, Chat GPI, is that Georgia GPI or?
Right, yeah, I'm relying on it more and more, I'm finding, so whether that's good or bad.
I actually they're actually just from her. She's like using the chat
Well, and
GPT.
interesting thing is, even if I wanted to, I don't have a clue how to use it. Not a clue, zero clue how to use it, and interestingly enough, I have zero interest. in using it. I certainly make sure my students know not to use it.
And I'm telling mine to use it, so, uh-oh.
Good luck with that. Oh, yeah, no, I know, but it's mostly, we know it's there. We talked about it, and I said, I know you're gonna look at it, but that's not your answer. It's just help.
Mine are mainly using it for R programming, which you really can't program without it, but yeah, not in other classes for sure.
So do we have a general strategy here? Roger, sound good?
Yep.
Okay, George?
Okay,
Georgia?
yeah, sounds good.
Okay. All right. That's good. I think, sounds like we have consensus on a process here. Okay, good. Existing office lease extension, water engineer.
Mr. Chair and board members, I have been interacting with the building owner a few times over some other items, and I am made aware that she would like to know what we're doing. Our lease runs out in May. And she's contemplating putting it on the market. So she would be happy to have us stick around. I did talk over the percentage increase. And that wasn't, this, the lease extension that you saw at the last board meeting is, I think, probably the best we would get out of her. One of the items that came up at the last board meeting was that I had not also distributed the original lease for the board's consideration. So on this particular item, I have also included the original lease in your packet.
Yeah, that's what we needed to see. I think there was some questions about the original, so did everybody see that? Because there was the modification, and I think it was pointed out that that's just a modification. Doesn't include the original lease, which we now have, so. Question is, do we want to agree with the modification now that we have the full lease in hand?
I didn't get a copy of it myself. Unless it's in the finance stuff.
In the file.
Thank you.
The last version did say February, and that'll of course need to go to a March date, but if the board was to decide to take any action.
Just curious here more than anything. I see the original lease that you have handed us as my signature, but not hers. Does that mean anything?
She did sign it.
Okay.
I do not have that.
Okay.
This occurred before I showed up. This is the version I have.
Okay.
Yep.
So if I remember, the question was whether we signed this modification, we were stuck with 3 years. Is that correct? Okay, and that answer was, well, the original lease addresses that, right?
Yes.
Where?
So it doesn't in terms of this modification agreement, but it has the termination provision under 15 where it says that the parties may negotiate an early termination.
That was what we're looking for, yeah. What's that?
Escape clause.
Yes.
Okay. Well, far enough along to take action on this, guys?
See, it looks like there was no predetermined penalty for getting out of the lease, which may be good, maybe bad, I don't know, but.
Yeah. Just a heat check here, Roger, good?
Yeah, I guess so.
We're good. So, before we take action, I guess any public comment? There's no public in the audience, any public online that's comment on this, before we take action?
There was no public online.
No public online, so for the record, there is no public comment because there is no public. So with that, if you're ready, we're looking at the commercial lease extension and modification agreement. I need a motion to approve that if you want to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the existing office lease extension.
Motion by George. Second by Ken, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, we are approved.
Want this back, Ethan? Get the signature on it.
Sure, thank you.
There's copies.
Next item on there is, one that I wanted to make sure we had on because I have been contacted several times by Sapphire asking where we're at with this. And I had sent out an email. I don't have a particular, I mean, I think I have a general idea where we wanna go with this, but we should make a decision so we can at least make sure that they're aware of whether we're gonna move forward with them or not.
Mr. Chair, may I make
Okay.
a comment? Interestingly, in the last few weeks, I've been doing some research for the team I work with at SKC on project and team resilience. And one of the things that's been bubbling up in long-term research is that having a contract with a group like Sapphire leads to increased work performance, increased worker retention. Just over and over, every metric you look at, whether you need it right away or not, having a team like Sapphire as part of your organization's plan makes not only good personnel sense, but good economic sense as well. And, you know, this was new information for me and it was fun to learn about it. So I think it's a step in the right direction to protect our staff and our team and just be there as a resource for them if they need it.
Ethan, do you have access to what the last information they sent us, Sapphire sent us? I think it was an email that I had forwarded to everyone.
I do not think I do.
One of you, cause unfortunately, for whatever reason, my phone truncates the number of emails I can keep on my, for this email, and I don't have my laptop, so if you
Are you
guys.
looking for the contract that they sent out?
Yeah, the last
Okay.
information that they sent, yeah.
Yeah, why don't I email it to Sydney and then she can pull it up
That's
on
good,
the
that's
screen.
what I'm looking
Is
for.
it the
yeah.
EAP agreement?
Oh, yes, if you have it. then
Yeah, I'm
go
already,
ahead.
getting there. So,
Cause he just sent that updated one here just a couple weeks ago.
oh, maybe I don't have the right one. This is dated 12/18/24.
No,
Okay, sorry, I do not have what you're talking about.
if he has it or
Well, now let me see.
Roger or somebody else has it.
I have it on my laptop. I don't have that with me.
This one I have was from,
If I had my laptop, I could get to it as well. For some reason, my phone truncates the number of emails I can keep.
so
The
I
ones that I get are ones that I send.
also only have the agreement from December 18th.
None of you can access your,
Once I have external hard drive.
you have a laptop I can get on? Maybe I can find,
I'll look and see. Takes a little while for mine to open.
I just didn't bring my laptop. Looked at it going out the door, I said, nah, I don't need that.
Well, while everybody's looking, can I share one more thing?
Yes,
So, okay. So one of the things that we looked into today, and this, just to qualify, this is a service that is offered in general under the concept of resiliency planning with a group like Sapphire. I don't know if Sapphire offers this specific training, but one of the workshops that a group like Sapphire can do or offer caught my attention today, and it was, the title of it was how to deal with uncertainty. And even if you are not a federal employee right now that is being directly impacted by this, chances are you have a relative or a friend or a child who is being impacted by this. And it can affect your day, your job, your performance. And I think, you know, I don't know what different challenges our staff may have now or in the future, but I think it really made me think about having an ace in the hole like a Sapphire to help you when things like that do arise, because I don't know about you guys, but I've been walking in shell shocked for the first hour of every work day, you know, just trying to figure out
Yeah.
the questions my students have right now.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Shane, go ahead.
How much does it cost?
That's what's
That's
in
what I'm
the
trying to-
All
document.
right, I'm sorry.
bottom line, right?
Well,
Different copy of the agreement, and it's not just.
I don't know if it's different than what we originally had. I just know that it was the recent one he sent. And
I should have that. 'cause
Yeah.
I forwarded it to you.
Yeah,
But I don't have a way to check sent mail.
because I
unless I'm
think
on
you
the
and I were in communication and he sent it to me after that communication.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I sent it back out to all of the
You should be.
board. That was just a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, dang. Okay, yep, I got it. We can look at it. It's February 21st. I got it.
Got it.
I got it.
So,
Thank you, Haley.
yeah, one of my, the springboard off of what she was just talking about, and I can't remember what's in our personnel policy, but what to me is important for employees too, is, and board members, really, that us as a collective is, not only an outlet like this for any kind of stressful situation, but also some longer term planning. Like if we have a significant accident and one of us passes away or we have a significant injury, what's a CISM? It's a critical incident stress management, of which this is the front end of that.
Mhm.
But, you know, lo and behold, one of us gets hurt significantly and, it affects our board, it affects our employees. What is the appropriate response? We bring in this group and walk us through some decompression exercises, if you will, or and that's important to have a system to plan for those unplanned incidents that you can't process this stuff in real time. You have to have a plan for it. You pull it off and say, hey, we're supposed to do A, B, and C. And you just go down because you're not thinking coherently anyway. So long story short, just forward thinking about what this is and what this does to, in my mind, springs you into the next step. In this case, employee might be using this just for stressful situations and whatnot, but which is good. But let's take the next step. We have a serious accident and someone's paralyzed. Traumatic injury happens out here, a traumatic event happens in the front with a public. How do we deal with that? And that's where a CISM can kick in and guide you through the process.
Yeah.
So again, just thinking out loud, and that's part of the annual operating plan I was talking about. There's a CISM in the back end. Appendix A, B, C, D is our critical incident stress management plan.
So I sent everyone a copy of that email that was sent to me, so all of you should be getting it in your inboxes now. And to answer your good question, Ethan, it's $175 an hour and $115 an hour to do a workshop for a group.
And they're, unless you use them, there's no cost.
Unless
That's
you
the way
use
their
it,
contract
no
is set up.
cost. Yeah,
So that you only pay if you use them.
right.
So this just puts that in place.
Yeah, it gets someone on your team when you need them.
on our team here in the office.
No, they, Sapphire has satellite offices between Missoula, Kalispell, and I think they have some trained counselors here in Ronan. And so you would just call them on an as-need basis. Or I think another thing they offered was if an employee needed to speak to someone privately from home about an issue, that would be available.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah,
This is here, it's a six-session model.
is that the? Yeah,
So I mean, does that mean they're gonna put on 6 sessions, or is it?
I think they were just trying to come up with a pricing.
Succession or six?
With,
6 sessions?
yeah. I think they had to come up with something for pricing.
Doesn't mean it has to be 6 sessions.
No,
No.
we're not obligated to use 6 sessions. Nor I don't think we're limited, I think we're an individual.
Okay, that's fine.
That's a good question.
But I don't have anything attached to what you just sent me.
Did I send it without attachments? That sounds like.
Oh, there's a second one. I got 3 emails here from you.
Yeah, I've been emailing you this morning.
So,
Yeah,
Um,
okay, that's it. And then, so, do we have it to put up?
I didn't receive. Oh. Sorry. Okay, let me forward this.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
can I explain a little bit further on this too?
yes.
So this is actually different than what was received in December, which was a 7-page agreement. That Sapphire had sent out for board signature. In that, they have exhibit A, which is scope of services, and exhibit B, which is fees. It explains in there that the 6 sessions would be for the EAP services. However, there are workplace services, there's, I think, like 5 of them that they offer that the board could use, including training programs, critical incident stress debriefing, management consultation, leadership skill and organizational training, and substance abuse training as well. So the 6 sessions is for EAP specifically, and that's just how they operate. It's inclusive up to 6 sessions for that, but then everything else would be like a use-based fee.
Thank you.
And that is similar to what was just sent again. And those costs are different per hour, for those
Mhm.
different categories.
I had meant to reach out to Judy and ask her if March McClellan has something similar. You know, and that maybe it might be a part of our services with them, but I didn't follow through yet.
So what are we debating now? Where are we at?
You wanna do it?
Oh, okay.
Shane?
So question to how we budget for this, if it's a per hour, how are we paying for this? Are we just agreeing to their services and then as employees need them, it's an hourly cost? And how do we budget for
And I
that?
thought we did set some aside for this kind of program at one point, but I don't remember what it's at in the budget.
The money that I had set aside was to re-engage, P&D consulting for, I mean, there's a lot of overlap with them. But, you know, we wanted to have them come back and do some more training with our office.
So whether we're rating or not, I don't know, but if we were interested, so in terms of process, I guess we should take this and have a budget folks take a look at this and give us an idea of where it fits in the budget.
Yeah.
And then come back for a final action on it.
Yes. Well, I don't even think I've seen this. There's one thing in there that says like 850. Is that? Okay.
So it seems like we would need to make some kind of decision on, there's different compartments, like Ethan's pointing out, that one's 850. And that next section up is 175 an hour. For what I was just talking about, a critical incident stress management exercise. And then there's the 150, so I think we need to figure out how much we want to put towards something like this. And maybe we can't do it all, but what components do we prioritize? So like the 135 per session is really an EAP level, 6 sessions for 7 employees, up to 7 employees. So that's, 6 times 135 times 7. Is that just what we want to do, or do we want to put more money and go deeper down the list? I'm just thinking out loud.
No, you're right, we need to estimate those.
Is that per employee or per session?
Well, my assumption is per employee per session. For 1 employee for 1 session is 135 an hour.
That makes sense. So we'll say that.
So I was just playing with some numbers. So like if you, I'm just throwing an idea out, but let's say you budgeted $5,000 for their services per year. At that 150 price point, that would give you about 33 hours divided by your staff. That gives everybody about 5 hours, right? Which that's a pretty nice benefit if you need it. And then if you don't use it, I guess you could roll that over into the next year, right? So it's just an idea.
So are you considering that budget to come out of the employee benefits?
I haven't got that far.
Okay.
I just ran some calculator numbers.
Sure.
You're just throwing out a number.
All right.
Yeah, just to start the discussion, but that's
Yeah.
obviously the very next question, isn't it? Where would we pull that out of? So,
And like, what happens if one person uses a bunch of it and then nobody else uses any of it? How do
And
you
that could happen.
manage that situation?
that could happen.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, we have to re-budget them. So, yeah,
Oh, I know, I think they have something similar to SKC. You can have up to a certain number of hours and then after that you pay.
The tribe allows 3 sessions
Okay.
that are free, and then if you want more after that, you pay for it.
Okay, thanks, George. Yeah, so maybe something.
Something like that makes sense. That's fixed,
Okay.
Yeah,
So then it's more like you said, it's an employee benefit. You could look at it that way, in a
Yeah.
way. How does the tribe, where do you think they pull the money from for that? Is
I
it?
have no idea.
an employee?
I used a marriage counseling once, and that's what I
Yeah.
stole, and personnel policy states that too.
Mhm.
You're allowed 3 sessions.
yeah, I think they put it right in the personnel department budget,
Okay. Okay.
if they budget for that.
Yeah, I know at SKC, we've had some instances where there were some really traumatic events and, they offer that to us as staff and faculty.
And it helped me, I'm glad I had it.
Oh,
The
yeah.
option.
It gets used, but for the most part, most people don't use it.
It's pretty underutilized.
Which is a shame.
And so to keep in mind, this is employees, spouses, independent.
Yes.
children, more than just who's sitting here.
Yes. Yes,
So I guess we'd have to define that, wouldn't we? Would we open it up for all of those people or?
well, that's what that's based on, the question, so you the right approach to decide if we want to grant 1 or 2 or 3 free sessions. And then we should start basing your budget estimates based on those numbers.
When I attended it, it covered both of us,
Oh, good.
you know, a section, you know, and you go
Nice.
to the marriage counselor.
Okay.
And I know whether, I have had friends that went through it too, and it was the same thing for them.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, so you should need that.
So if we have, so we can throw out a budget number now and agree on it, or we can have, agree on a limit and have the budget folks take a look at that and come back with some ideas about how much it's gonna be and where we're gonna get it from.
Fully staffed, how many employees do we have?
Well, that right there is based on 7 employees.
And that would be about $5,670. The way that's penciled out right there. 7 employees, 6 sessions at $135.
Let's do a limit of $7,000. I mean, budget, excuse me, budget limit of $7,000, rounded up.
That sounds like a fair plan. Start with there and have the budget crew come up with a proposal to bring back.
Monitor it and see if we need to make adjustments over time.
Okay.
I mean, that's, yeah.
Is it possible after a more developed plan is set up that we could let staff weigh out?
Oh, absolutely. But I think
Yeah.
if, just to add to that, typically when staff are asked if they need this across all industries, they say no.
And we asked earlier,
And they said no,
yeah.
but you don't know that you need it until you need it. And then when you need it and it's not available, then you have a problem.
Yeah, it'd be benefit and available, whether they use it or not, I guess it'd be individual choice. Roger, are you hearing all this? What are you thinking?
I've been listening in. I think it's like you said, it's available if somebody needs it. If you use it or don't, that's your prerogative.
Okay, lots of ideas floating here. Last idea heard was, $7,000 budget.
Yes.
And see, and start there and see where that gets us. Hey,
Follow-up question with that. So seeing what the budget proposal would be, you know, I'm thinking of kind of the policy side of it here. Does the board want to decide, you know, if they're gonna offer 2 covered EAP sessions, other ones outside of that, or an extension to that would be out of the employees' pockets? And then maybe part of the 7,000 budget is, you know, the board will also cover A and D on the list for, you know, other services as part of the budget. I'm just trying to think of the policy side of it, because if that's the case, then, you know, I'd be willing to draft the policy side of it to go along with the budget proposal.
yes. I see heads nodding. Do I see your head nodding, Roger?
Yeah, I have to leave here shortly, so I'm good with that.
Well, let's do that based on. So here's the concept. So we've got $7,000 proposed budget line item. Proposed draft policy. In the meantime, we can have our budget folks take a look and see where it might come from. And then next time we meet, have it on the agenda for final action. Yes. Sound fair?
Yeah, I think any sort of, you know, direction on your part initially, right, on. Is it something where the board wants to cover all 6 that are offered for each employee, or do we want to start somewhere where it's 3 and then the other 3 that are offered for each employee would be out of their own pocket. I mean, I just need a starting
Yeah,
point.
let's start with this. So do you want to make all of the services that are offered in this proposal available? Or only the counselor, the top one?
But I don't know. That's a hard question.
Well, can I,
Yeah, Roger.
when it seemed like I'm trying to go from recall now. When we talked to these people initially, they had people locally that could also come in and put on some seminars and team building exercises and that sort of thing. And as I recall, that seemed pretty beneficial at the time. So I would be more inclined to go with more of a package situation than just limiting it to the 3 sessions, you know?
Well, meaning covering all of the services they offer in the plan.
Right, being able to procure all of their services, but
Yeah.
then maybe we just pare it back to, you know, we'll use them as for those services, but we will still offer these EAPs for 3 sessions, you know.
Yeah, you guys, so now let's go to that. So $7,000, all the services in the plan. So, in terms of the EAP, 1 or 2 or 3, we're gonna offer.
I think we're almost gonna have to have the exact thing Ethan said, what if an employee uses them all?
Well, that's why we start somewhere though, but they're gonna say,
Three.
they're gonna offer 3?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good enough for now, Haley?
Yeah, great, thank you.
All right. All right,
I have to depart, so I'm gonna sign off.
so you're not part of the executive session?
No, I can't be, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Have a good night.
All right,
Roger.
see you guys.
Yeah. Okay, so no further board action necessary on Sapphire. We've got a couple steps to take. Item 11, personnel policies. Do we have something that we need to talk about there today?
Yeah, just, Haley and I wanted to give you an update, which is
Okay.
nothing that you had asked for.
Yeah, yes.
Right, so, in addition to all the onboarding and other training, we have spent several hours trying to, work towards getting, board members, a cleaned up version of the OE personnel policies. And, our hope is to provide that to the board for, a more thorough and full review, probably in the next 2 weeks. And then give you something that is something you can put out to, public notice if you so.
Very good.
And Haley can chime in as much as you'd like.
Yeah, no, I think the intent was for us to give the board members a clean document prior to the next meeting with the directive to seriously sit down and review the clean version. So at that next meeting, we aren't taking up space and time to go over this that you've already looked at. If you have concerns or comments or questions that come from your review, we can discuss them then, but we're really looking to put those out.
Yep. I like the idea. That's good. Thank you. Yeah, we do need to make that,
Yeah.
keep that as a priority. Okay. That
That's it? Oh, no,
it?
Mr. Chairman, sign that.
No. What am I signing? Oh, I see. Okay.
Releases.
Don't matter, just sign it.
So much sass.
Like Tony Stark. I like people to hand me things.
That's funny. That's a niche reference.
Yeah, go ahead.
One I very much.
I'm gonna scan it and send it to her and we'll see if we can get this closed. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
So we are at announcing next meetings, and what we had previously discussed is it not March 18th, so we're looking at an executive session on the 25th at 1 o'clock and a regular session on the 27th at 1 o'clock.
Yep.
Doesn't have it on here, but any public comment? There is no public here. Any more public online?
No
There's
public
no
online.
public online so no public to comment. So we are going to, let me just touch base. Roger's done. Anything else? Anything else? Anything else? Okay. So we want to move to an executive session. We have a place
Yes.
to meet with our executive session. And, do we need, so we want Haley. Do we need anybody else? For now?
No.
Okay. So I'll take a motion to end our public session.
Motion adjourned.
Motion by Ken,
I second.
second by Georgia. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. You guys got homework now.
We got homework.